During college break, I wanted to visit my childhood bedroom. Don't go in there, my mom said. It's just being used for storage now, my dad added, looking uneasy. Later that day, I went in anyway and saw that. 5 minutes later, I was on the phone with 911. I hadn't expected anything, really, just to sleep. I came back with a pounding headache and a nearly dead phone battery, thinking about the comfort of my old bed and the cheap lavender candle I'd left on the windowsill the summer before. It was late, not suspiciously so, just quiet, dark, the kind of late where the house feels paused. My parents opened the front door as if everything was totally normal. "Hi," my mom said with a smile. My dad cracked a joke about how heavy my suitcase was. I nodded and stepped inside, trying to calculate how much sleep I'd missed that week. Probably 10 hours short. Everything seemed normal, which somehow made it stranger. There was no awkwardness, no raised voices, no weird glances, just a spotless hallway and the light scent of fresh laundry detergent. "I'm just going to drop my bag in my room," I said automatically. That's when my mom spoke. "Don't go in there." She said it too quickly. "It's just storage now," my dad added, his voice a little tense. Not panicked, more like he wasn't sure which version of this conversation we were about to step into. I paused, not because it was dramatic, but because it was oddly out of place. "It's only temporary," my mom added quickly, as if brushing it aside. "You'll sleep in the guest room this time." They moved on from it. I didn't. My old room, the one place in that house that ever felt like mine, was suddenly off limits. No explanation, no warning, just closed. I didn't press. I followed them to the guest room like it didn't bother me, even though it absolutely did. The guest room was mostly a folded couch and a weird odor that hadn't been there before. There was a blanket, but no pillow, no lamp, no closet space. I sat down, and the springs resisted more than I expected. "This okay?" my mom asked. "Yeah," I said. It wasn't. The rest of the night was quiet. We had dinner, but not much was said. They asked a few questions about school. I answered. My dad mentioned gas prices. My mom laughed at something. I honestly can't even remember what. It felt like we were all performing a script nobody believed in anymore. I went to bed early, at least I tried to. I stared up at the ceiling. The room was cold. My back ached. There was a strange sound in the wall. Pipes, maybe, or something living. And I kept thinking about that door, why it was blocked off, what they could possibly be hiding in there. It might sound minor, but it didn't feel that way. It felt off. Sometime after midnight, I got up. Didn't check the time. I just had to see it. Needed to know. The hallway was dim, silent. I walked slowly, partly to avoid waking anyone, partly because of what I might find. The boxes, the ones that had been stacked in front of my door earlier, they were gone. Just gone. I stared, then reached for the handle. It was locked. My room never had a lock. Not once. Not when I was growing up. Not even after begging for one in high school. I stood there far too long. Then I remembered the hiding spot. Back hallway, behind the laundry shelf. That's where they always kept the extra keys. I went there, reached behind the panel, and sure enough, there was a key. New shiny, taped in the usual spot. I don't know what I expected. Maybe that it wouldn't be there. Maybe that I'd chicken out. I didn't back at the door. I slid the key in, turned it. It clicked open. I took a breath, then I opened the door. It smelled different, like dust, and something else, like the air hadn't moved in weeks. I stepped inside, I saw what was in there, and I stopped. Everything. And my body stopped. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't some random storage box or old furniture or a pile of winter coats. It was exactly what I didn't want it to be. 5 minutes later, I was outside calling 911. I didn't knock on their door. I didn't tell them I knew. I just waited for the police to show up. I didn't look back. Not yet. I didn't always know something was off. That's the dangerous part about certain families. They don't scream at you or lock you in a basement. They make pasta. They smile. They ask about school. They make it easy to convince yourself that the knot in your chest is your fault. Growing up, I would have said things were fine, good. Even I was the younger sister. Vivian was the older one, and the rules were pretty simple. She got to go first, and I got to watch Vivian. Had the louder voice, the better grades, the shinier hair. She wore blazers to school, dances, and pulled them off. She knew what she wanted from a young age. Journalism. Probably travel, maybe a master's someday, and everyone around her just nodded and opened doors. I didn't mind, mostly. I played music, kept my head down, learned how to disappear in plain sight. But even then I noticed things: how Mom always made Vivian's favorite dessert but forgot mine. How Dad would interrupt me mid-sentence to ask Vivian if she needed more water. How, when I once said I feel like she's your favorite, they both laughed, like I just said something adorable and stupid. You're imagining it, Mom said. You're being dramatic, Dad. Added, I learned not to say it out loud again. It got clearer in college. Vivian had most of her tuition covered by Mom and Dad. Not all of it, but enough that she could intern over summers instead of working retail. I asked once if they could help me too, just a little, maybe a textbook or two, and Mom said, we wish we could, sweetie, in a voice that made me feel like I'd asked for a Tesla. So I worked cafes, admin assistant gigs, a tutoring job I hated. Vivian, meanwhile, studied abroad in Florence and said it deepened her understanding of narrative. I deepened my understanding of overdraft fees. Now she's finishing her degree. She says she wants to take a year off before grad school to travel, decompress, see the world. She talks about it constantly, like it's her life's work: Thailand, Morocco, the Galapagos. She says it'll make her a better writer. Maybe it will. What gets me is how excited my parents are, like glowing full on. We'll make it happen. Energy. They've already started. Talking logistics, money, flights, I overheard them saying, maybe Grandma could help that part. Made me stop walking. Not help Vivian exactly. Just that. When Grandma passes, they expect to use part of the inheritance to fund the trip. You know, since the money would be staying in the family. Grandma's 89, still sharp, still herself, still alive. It was the when that got me, like her death was just a pending transaction. What they don't get, what I haven't told them, and maybe never will, is that I'm not jealous of Vivian's plane tickets. I'm angry because of Grandma, because we have something, a thing that no one else in the family even pretends to understand. Music, she played cello and piano, taught me both before I could reach the pedals. Her hands used to move like water. Mine tried to keep up when I was 10. She let me sit beside her while she opened a locked cabinet. I wasn't supposed to know about. Inside were instruments I didn't have names for. Violas with inlays, flutes with carved, keys, a mandolin that looked like it belonged in a museum. She told me they'd been passed down, kept, never sold, played, but always with care. Years later. When I was home for a weekend, she told me they were meant for me. She didn't say it like it was a gift. She said it like it was a continuation, like she was handing over a language I didn't tell anyone. Not because it was secret, because it was sacred, but they found out and they were pissed. I heard Dad first, late one night. It's not fair to give it all to Rami, Mom agreed. Said it should be split evenly, that those kinds of things belong to the whole family. They meant Vivian, who doesn't play Vivian. Who once asked if the oboe was the goose-sounding one. I wanted to scream, but Grandma didn't back down. She said clearly that they weren't for sale, that she wasn't dead, that she had the right to decide what happened to her things. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Then the break-in happened. Grandma had spent the night at the hospital. A minor issue, they said. Just precautionary. She returned the next day to discover her back window shattered and the entire collection missing. All of it. She called me in tears. I'd never heard her cry before. Not at funerals, not even when Grandpa passed, not when cancer took her best friend. But this undid her. They're gone, she kept repeating. I thought I'd have time to show you. I tried to soothe her, told her maybe insurance would help. She said, it's not about the money. And I already knew that. Of course I did. She fell ill again just 2 days later, admitted to the hospital once more, weaker this time. The doctor said stress was making things worse. I took a break from work and stayed by her side, sitting at the edge of her bed as she slept in restless half-hour intervals. It wasn't just the theft, it was what it meant. That something handed down through generations had been lost on her watch, under her own roof. I had never felt so much rage as I did toward whoever did it. And then I found out who it was. Because I opened that door, the one I wasn't supposed to open, and walked into the room. There they were. The cases. The instruments. Every last one, tucked under a tarp and stashed in my childhood bedroom like some buried, cursed inheritance. They hadn't been stolen. They'd been hidden. 5 minutes later, I was outside, my breathing uneven, dialing 911. The dispatcher told me help was on the way. I didn't really know what soon meant when it was past midnight on a sleepy street where nothing ever really happens. But I stayed outside anyway. Not to be brave, not for dramatic effect. I just couldn't bear to step back inside. I didn't want to look at the kitchen or walk the hallway or see my parents asleep in their bed, while Grandma lay in a hospital, hooked up to machines because of what they'd done. I stood next to the mailbox, my jacket only half zipped, fiddling with my phone like that might somehow make time pass faster. Every so often, I looked back at the house. All the lights were off, except the one on the porch. From the outside, it looked perfectly normal. Everything did, which was sort of the point, wasn't it? The patrol car rolled up exactly 28 minutes later. I counted. No sirens, no flashing lights, just the low hum of an engine and the soft crunch of tires against the curb. 2 officers stepped out, one older, one younger. Neither seemed surprised to find me there, standing out in the cold, gripping my phone like it was the only thing keeping me upright. "You the one who called?" the older one asked. I nodded. They didn't ask why I was outside, they just listened, as I explained everything, calmly and clearly. The instruments, my childhood room, the break-in that wasn't. I told them about Grandma, about the hospital stays, the insurance claim. I laid out the whole thing in a voice that didn't even feel like mine. They asked if I wanted to remain anonymous. I shook my head. I don't care anymore. They nodded, like they'd heard that before. Maybe they had. One of them stayed beside me. The other approached the house and rang the doorbell. A minute passed. Then lights began switching on. First upstairs, then in the hallway, then finally by the front door. My dad answered, wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair sticking up on one side. He looked confused, not alarmed, not ashamed, just groggy and puzzled. My mom stepped in behind him, tugging on a sweater. She looked even more bewildered than he did. I couldn't hear what was being said. The officer kept his voice low. I watched from the sidewalk, not hiding, just staying out of the way. It felt strange to watch them from that distance, like they were strangers in someone else's house. Eventually, both officers went inside the door, closed behind them. I stood there, arms folded, trying to stay warm. My feet were starting to ache from the cold. My hands had gone numb a while ago. I kept my eyes on the house. I didn't know what was happening inside, didn't want to guess. Part of me expected yelling footsteps, slammed doors, but it stayed quiet, just shifting shadows behind the curtains, the occasional silhouette, then nothing for a while. I thought about Grandma, what this would have done to her if she'd known what it already had. 20 minutes later, a second vehicle pulled up. This one was different, larger, with an empty cargo area and protective lining. Inside, they were there for the instruments, the evidence 2 more officers got. Out, they spoke briefly to the first pair, then disappeared inside. A few minutes later, they started bringing the cases out. They moved carefully, like they knew what they were carrying, like someone had told them. The value wasn't just in numbers. I didn't move. Just watched the violin, the cello, the mandolin, each one of them carried like it meant something. And then the front door opened again. My mom stepped out, scanning the yard. She looked right past me. At first, then froze her eyes, locked on mine. No words, no expression. Shift. Just that cold, silent recognition. Then my dad stepped out behind her. They both stared. They didn't say a word. They didn't need to. I saw it in their eyes. What I'd done, what they thought I was. Now, betrayer, backstabber, stranger. I didn't look away. Just held the stare and let the silence settle. Eventually, one of the officers came back over. "Everything's been cataloged," he said. "We're just wrapping up the report now." I nodded. "My bag's still inside," I told him. "I don't want to go in alone." "Of course," he said, and walked in with me. Inside, it was quiet. Nothing had changed in the guest room. My bag was already packed. I grabbed it without glancing around. My parents stood silently in the hallway, watching, still not saying a word. I didn't look at them as I walked out. Didn't feel the need. Outside, I saw the last instrument case being loaded up. The second vehicle's door shut. Papers were signed. A clipboard passed one final time between the officers. And then it was done. "Do you have somewhere to stay?" one of them asked. I shook my head. "Can you take me to the hospital?" I asked. He nodded. I slid into the back seat and closed the door behind me. We drove away in silence. I didn't glance back. I didn't need to. They dropped me off at the hospital just after 6. I had my bag, but no real plan. I walked in and asked which floor she was on. Grandma was still in her room. Still breathing, still surrounded by too many machines, but awake. She looked up when I entered and smiled, like nothing had happened. I sat beside her, took her hand, and said, "They found the instruments." She closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. "Thank God," she said. I didn't tell her who had taken them, didn't explain where they were found, just that they were safe now. That was enough for her. She squeezed my hand gently. "I wanted you to have them," she said. "That was always the point." "I know." She leaned back against the pillow, said nothing more. A nurse came in a little later, checked her vitals, and smiled. "If she stays calm," the nurse said, "she'll recover." Around 7:30, I stepped outside. My phone was buzzing already. 47 missed calls, more texts, voicemails. Mom, Dad, Vivian, over and over. While I stared at the screen, it lit up again. Mom calling. I picked up. Her voice came through loud, rushed, and furious. "How could you do this to us?" I didn't say anything. "You called the police. You embarrassed your own parents. You've destroyed everything." "You hid the collection," I said quietly. "You told Grandma it was gone. You submitted a false insurance claim." "She's fine," my dad jumped in. "She didn't die." "She could have." There was silence on the line. Then Mom again. "We're your family. You don't treat family this way. You don't do that to Grandma." "You've never been grateful," she continued, her voice shaking. "Always turning things around. Always making yourself the victim." "I'm not the victim," I said. "She is." "You're not our daughter anymore," she said flatly. I didn't respond. Then Dad muttered something under his breath. "She's old anyway." It just slipped out. I don't think he meant to say it aloud. Something in me shut down, went quiet. "You were waiting for her to die," I said. "That's what this was about." Neither of them said a word to deny it. I hung up, blocked both numbers. Vivian called 10 minutes later. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Her tone was different, like she was trying to sound calm and failed. "I heard what you did," she said. "I did what was right. You called the cops on your own parents. They committed insurance fraud. They almost killed Grandma." "Oh, come on," she said. "It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. We just needed the money. It's not like anyone was hurt. Grandma was hurt. She's old there." "It was. Again, you're really going to throw away the whole family over this?" she asked. I didn't say anything, Romy. You've always been dramatic. You act like the world's out to get you. But I ended the call, blocked her too. I sat down on a bench outside the hospital. No family, no more noise, just air. I didn't cry. I didn't break down. I didn't feel liberated or strong or heroic. I just felt finished. They made their decisions and I made mine. It's been 6 months. I haven't heard a single word from them, and I haven't sent one either. The last thing I heard came through my cousin, a hushed voice and a short text message. They pled guilty. Sentenced today. 1 year of house arrest, 400 hours of community service. Felony charges, both of them. They wear ankle monitors now. They're not allowed to leave home unless it's for trash pickup or food bank shifts. It's all public, everyone knows. They pass neighbors who used to wave. Now those same neighbors cross the street. Nobody stops by. They're not welcome anywhere. They stood in court and read a statement of apology. Not to Grandma, she wasn't there, but to the courtroom, the judge, the official record. No family came, not even Vivian. She disappeared from social media for a while, then reappeared like nothing had happened. New profile picture, some inspirational quote about inner peace, comments disabled. Like if she curated the narrative tightly enough, maybe the truth would forget she was involved. Grad school, put on pause. The big trip never happened. Last update was, she's back home. Not working, not posting much, not making any real plans. And me? I'm not watching anymore. I'm done. Grandma just turned 90 last week. She's home, she's healthy, and she's sharper than most people I know in their 30s. We threw her a birthday party, small but full. Her closest friends came, the ones who never stopped calling, even during her hardest days. Some of her former music students showed up too. A few brought their own kids. Maybe they wanted their children to meet the woman who once taught them to play like every note had meaning. She wore her favorite cardigan, the one with the pearl buttons, and laughed the entire afternoon. Not polite laughter, real laughter, the kind I hadn't heard from her in years. The instruments were there too, back in her possession. No longer evidence, no longer locked away in some case file. We set them up in a corner of the room, not to be used, really, just to be present. I assumed no one would touch them. But around 5 p.m., as the light came through the curtains just right, Grandma rose from her chair and walked over. She didn't ask, didn't wait. She sat at the piano like it had been calling to her all day. The room fell silent, and then she began to play. Not a full song, just enough to make your chest go tight and your throat do that thing when you're holding back tears in front of other people. She played like she was still 60, like the last year hadn't taken anything from her. After she finished, one of her friends smiled and said, "90 looks good on you." Grandma grinned and replied, "Might have another decade in me, if nobody tries to kill me again." The whole room burst out laughing. But I didn't, because I believed her. She's 90, and she's still here, still playing, still sharp. Some people think growing old is permission to stop. Seeing someone, like once they hit a certain number, they become optional, easier to forget. But no one gets to decide how much time someone has left just because it suits their life better. Grandma might live to 95 or 100, maybe even 100. I'm not counting, I'm just showing up. She doesn't talk about my parents anymore, or Vivian, and I don't either. The instruments are home, the music has returned, and for us, that's enough. Did I go too far or not far enough? Comment your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe.